Hello and welcome. I'm Claudia Rizzini, the Executive Director of the Radcliffe Fellowship Program at Harvard University. It is my pleasure to introduce Narges Mahyar. What does it mean to make the invisible visible? This is a central question for Narges, a computer scientist whose work lies at the intersection of human-computer interaction and information visualization. Her global education, from training as an artist and electrical engineer in Iran to advanced studies in Malaysia and Canada, influenced her design-forward approach to creating visualization tools that address socio-technical problems in civic spaces. Moreover, Narges is deeply interested in amplifying voices and promoting democracies in local communities, breaking down the cultural and systemic barriers that keep residents from participating in civic planning. Narges' lab at UMass Amherst has proposed technology and programs to solicit feedback on urban planning proposals and explored ways to track real-time audience feedback in town hall meetings. By exploring easy-to-access civic technology, her lab seeks to give community members the entry point they need to engage with and make meaningful changes to their towns and cities. During her year at Radcliffe, Narges is building a web-based platform that marries the power of augmented reality and the attributes of a community forum. She hopes the platform will give all residents of East Boston a tool to visualize the impending effects of climate change on their neighborhood and empower them to join the discourse for a more tenable action plan for the coming years. The Q&A today will be moderated by our Radcliffe Salata Climate Justice Fellow, Fuchsia Hoover. Please join me in welcoming Narges Mahyar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Claudia, for that wonderful introduction. I couldn't have introduced my work better than what you just did. It's truly an honor to be here today among my brilliant fellows. When I received the Radcliffe Fellowship, my colleague and mentor, who has been also a past fellow, expressed her joy, saying, "I'm so happy for you, it's going to be transformational." And indeed, it has already exceeded all expectations. So thank you so much to the wonderful Radcliffe staff for making such a nurturing and wonderful environment for us. I'm excited to talk about my research on rising tides, which is a technology approach for broadening public participation in climate actions using mixed reality visualization. Climate change is one of the world's most complex issues. Global warming has raised global sea level about 8 inches since 1880, and the sea level rise is accelerating. Evidence shows that seas are surging and tides are rising. Rising sea level has become one of the most important threats to our planet. As sea level is rising, it causes the coastal cities around the world to experience more extreme floods. The grim reality unfolds. As seas are surging and tides are rising, our coastlines are also vanishing. Many studies and evidence converge on the inevitable outcome that sooner or later our coastlines will be disappeared under the rising sea. As a computer scientist, passionate about making positive in the world, I've been designing, building, and studying technology for increasing public participation in complex, important sociotechnical problems. I combine my interdisciplinary background in visualization or information visualization, which is the process of representing data in a visual and meaningful way so people can make sense of it and understand it, as well as social computing, which is a branch of computer science which works at the intersection of social behavior and computing systems, as well as design, which is my background. And I also more and more apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to build systems for increasing public participation in these complex problems. And then it's notable to say that all of my work is under this overarching framework of human-centered design, meaning that all of my work follows a deeply human-centered design approach. And by that, I mean we pay attention to human needs when designing those computing systems. So you might want to know a little bit more about human-centered computing. It basically centers the process of computing system design around human needs and incorporates human factors in computer system design and computing practices such as the social and cultural elements. And basically, the shift from only technology-centric computing to a human-centric computing can further unlock the ability of humans to leverage technology to their advantages. And that's why I'm so passionate about my field and making impact with human-centered computing. At UMass Amherst, I'm the co-director of HCI Viz Lab, which is the first HCI and visualization lab at UMass. In 2020, we started with only 3 PhD students, and we have more than 24 active members and maybe around 25 alumni. And the lab focuses its research on socially impactful technology that empowers data-driven decision-making. Here are, to give you a sense of where I'm coming from, here are the main directions of our research and some selected work. So visual analytics is basically was the focus of my PhD, with the focus of empowering analysts and those experts who have to go through complex data and need to make decisions, especially in a collaborative setting. So you might see through some of those thumbnails that we were working around large interactive surfaces and building visualization tools for them to enable to do their task more effectively and more collaboratively. And then during the past 9 years, I've dedicated my research life to building tools for addressing complex sociotechnical problems when we build community-centered tools, tools that are centered around the needs of community for empowering them in decision-making. I'm going to bring overview of some of this work today in this talk. And then the other direction of my work is what I like to call visualization for empowerment, because it was somehow a shift after many years of working with the general public to think about how we can empower general public, how we can broaden participation in visualization for those who need to make decisions collectively or even personally from visualization. And perhaps COVID-19 was a good use case for the importance of visualization for everyday people. So speaking of sociotechnical problems, design scholars such as Norman and Staper argue that many problems that designers and technology and designers are dealing with are sociotechnical, meaning that they are complex, multifaceted problems that are difficult to solve due to their interconnectedness nature and also shifting nature. In this classic article in 1973, design theorist Rittel and Weber used the term wicked problem to refer to those sociotechnical problems that are difficult to define and solve. Classic examples of wicked problems are poverty, climate change, education, and sustainability. A wicked problem is often a social problem. For example, how would how would you try to address global issues such as climate change and also access to clean drinking water? It's really hard to think about where to begin, and perhaps because they're so interconnectedness, addressing one element of this problem can cause unwanted consequences on the other element, and therefore they are wicked. So in this article, they came up with 10 different characteristics of these wicked problems, but mainly they are unstructured, meaning they are difficult to sort cause and effect. And they are cross-cutting, meaning they have many overlapping stakeholders, each of them coming from different background, expertise, expectation, which makes this space very messy as well. And then they're relentless. They cannot be solved once and for all. So you might ask how to tackle wicked problems then. Community engagement is the key to tackle wicked problems because it helps decision makers to gain a much deeper insight into the people involved and learn how to reframe the problem and how to come up with solutions that are viable. Also because civic problems or those sociotechnical problems are often too complex to solve through a top-down approach. So it's really good to also bring the community to raise their awareness and get their buy-in, but also to tap into their local knowledge and, more importantly, co-create action plans with all of these stakeholders. However, here, the big problem is community engagement is a century-long problem. Who has been in one of those town hall meetings or public hearing? Some of you. So as you might have experienced, only a handful of people get to stand up and talk about bring and raise their comments. And in this article, Ines and Buher argue that legally required participation methods in the US, especially those public forums and hearings and review and comments, not only do not meet the most basic goals of public participation, but they are counterproductive. They're causing anger, mistrust, because it's really hard to achieve genuine participation, and the public who participate seldom feel they've been heard. I want to mention that there are so many challenges about public engagement itself. It's a multifaceted problem. In this talk, I refer to those main challenges, still grand challenges in public engagement that my research has been trying to address over the past 9 years. So one is, how do we enhance engagements of the one who are engaged enough to come to those public meetings, but we don't have a means of further deepening their engagement? What is the role of technology and visualization to make them more engaged? How we can engage, again, those who are engaged enough to participate in a town hall meeting, but for many reasons remain silent. And the biggest perhaps problem around public engagement have been how to scale it beyond those who are usually affluent, educated Western folks. And then another more underexplored problem in this space is how do we design technology to enable us to record and analyze those public input that are so important, so precious for making democratic decision-making at the end? Here are examples of technology that my team and I have been building for addressing some of these grand challenges. For example, UDeco Spaces was built for enhancing public engagement. Community Create for scaling participation beyond those who can come to public meetings. And Community Click was for engaging reticent participants, where Community Pulse, we built it for utilizing and analyzing public input. And lastly, Community Bots, which was an AI platform enabling us to elicit timely and rich input from the public. So I'm going to spend a few minutes going over these projects very briefly, maybe a few slides for each, to give you a sense of the work that we have been doing. Starting from UD Spaces, it's short for Urban Design Collaborative Spaces, and it's a tabletop-centered, multi-display environment. As you may see through this picture, it has this large interactive tabletop, which people can interact with in a natural and touch-based interaction, but it also has a wall display enabling people to see a 3D of the design they're making, and also connected to this ecosystem, there are iPads enabling people to also have a personal space and to be able to check the visualizations of the metrics and how their design gonna impact sustainability, walkability, and so on. This was my postdoc, very interdisciplinary postdoc at University of British Columbia between computer science and architecture and landscape architecture. Here's the tabletop interface. At each corner, there is a case bar where user can explore different buildings, which we call them cases, and that they can use for their design. As they browse through, they can just, grab and drag and drop with simple gestures into this interactive map. They can also position it where they want it with just simple interaction and gestures. And there are also wall displays that enable them to see a sort of 3D of this neighborhood they're designing. And finally, handheld devices helps with, first, a remote interaction with the wall, which is further away. And then also, we build a visualization dashboard that enables people to choose and then drag and drop their favorite metrics. We did this because there are so many metrics in urban design that people can easily get overwhelmed. So we wanted the team to come up with those customized metrics they really care about and be able to actively monitor them as they were changing their design. One interesting observation from our data, when we ran a comparative study between a paper-based version and our digital tabletop-centered tool, was it actually increased equity of participation. And by that, I mean in paper-based version, we saw and observed that some paper-based groups were guarding their design like this because they felt like the time was short and they felt they have more expertise than others. They didn't want others to mess up their design. Whereas here, everything was fast and quick. They could redo it, they could change it, share it with the group, and so on. So one of our participants said having this tabletop got every stakeholder involved so they can make changes themselves, see those changes right away, which promotes collaboration. There were a lot of implications of this work that we discussed in the paper, but in short, this multi-touch and natural interaction was a really interesting way for broadening public participation. We deployed this tool in several workshops in Vancouver, and we had people, older adults, and we also invited high school students to use our system. And everybody from this various demographic learned how to use the system in less than 5 minutes. And it was a very complex system, so that's the good news for building technology for broadening participation. Well, moving from UD Spaces, Community Click is a system for capturing and reporting community feedback from town halls to improve inclusivity. Well, we have seen in education that iClickers have been able to increase engagement of students with the material. Therefore, we took it to the town halls to improve inclusivity and expressivity for attendees, but we made one important modification, which was instead of polling the audience, we made it real time. So at any given time, audience can provide their feedback, and we were recording everything as it was happening. And this was the work of my former PhD students, Mahmoud Jassim, along with other master's students and collaborators. So again, back to our town hall meetings, there are still common methods for hearing from the public, understanding their requirements and needs and issues. And ideally, you want to hear from all of these people who made the effort to come to those town hall meetings. However, what happens in reality is due to fear of public participation, fear of confrontation, shortage of time, or language barriers, many of those people remain silent. On the other hand, the organizer struggled to facilitate the meeting because at the same time, they need to run the meeting, to manage discussion, to collect data, often resolve conflict. And as a result of this process, often those precious public input get lost during this process and never gets utilized. So in order to address that, we came up with this iClicker ideas when we had the blue one for organizers to record at any given time and say, hey, there's a main issue coming from the community, we should record it, or there is a new idea. And we basically labeled the gray ones for attendees to at any given time say, I agree or disagree, I'm unsure, or this is important, I'm confused, and basically be able to record their comments in real time. And this is the recorder that we built for making it in real time. So we did basically deploy this in a town hall in Amherst on the issues of parking spaces in town hall. When we had 33 attendees, we gave them a 5-minute tutorial, handed everyone iClickers, and surveyed them at the end. And I want to show you the survey result because it was very striking. First, we asked them, if they're comfortable sharing their ideas in general during town hall meetings. And here you can see at the top right, there are those people that felt at ease talking and bringing their ideas, whereas on the bottom left, you see some people very strongly disagree with this statement. Then we asked them if iClicker helped them to provide my feedback, and here's where we saw this major shift. You see those people at the top right who were comfortable speaking didn't still dislike the iClickers. Some even like having both channels for bringing their comments silently as well as vocally. But here's the shift. You see those people who didn't feel empowered to talk? One of the participants on the survey wrote for us that your tool empowered me to bring my feedback even silently, which was exactly the group we were working with. Okay, moving away from this one, Community Crit was my quest on thinking about, okay, there are technology, we have built some, and others have built some, for increasing participation during those in-person meetings. What about those people who don't have the luxury to come to these meetings? They're busy, they have family, they're professional, they need to take care of their family members. And then this project was inspired by crowdsourcing, which is basically you can ask everyone to bring their ideas to enable public participation at scale, and to enable them to not only propose ideas, but think about how they can improve and evaluate those ideas together. And this was a part of my postdoc project at UC San Diego Design Lab with Stephen Dow. Well, we went to those workshops, we built partnership with people who were redesigning the downtown of San Diego, and at the end, we built this Community Crit online tool for lowering the barrier. It works on a variety of devices, so they could grab the QR code and use it, and then it gives people a brief introduction on the placemaking project, and then structure a process where people can select the ideas they like. And those ideas can come from public workshops, which we went and recorded and put online, or it could be from ideas that people posted online. And then from there, We asked them only 5 questions, knowing that people don't have a lot of time to spend on their civic issues, so it has to be short and sweet. And we also provided a skip button because we really wanted to gather meaningful feedback rather than forcing people to do so. And then they can also submit their own ideas. They can give it a name and add their picture, and the rest of community can weigh on it. And finally, they can see all of the ideas that have been reported and proposed, and they can basically repeat this set of activities as many times as they want, or some people do just only 5 activities and leave. After deploying this tool in San Diego for 4 weeks, we received 352 contributions from 39 community members, which from the planning group we were working with was a great success, because to achieve this many, deep engagement, they need to run several workshops. And we interviewed participants after all and learned they found the tool very straightforward, empowering, easy. The main contribution of this work was, though, scaling up and diversifying public participation from those small number of people who can make it to those meetings to a much broader range of audience who can access these ideas online, and connecting the two by bringing those ideas to the next workshop and by recording ideas of workshop, putting them online. Well, afterwards, we started thinking about, okay, we're gathering all of these comments and public from people, but it's really hard to synthesize and analyze because there are very unstructured, short comments from people. And we built Community Pulse, which is a visual analytic tool for facilitating community input analysis by surfacing those hidden insights, community reflection, and priorities. And this is another work of my former PhD students, Mahmoud Jassim, an external collaborator. So Community Pulse was a tool to show the pulse of community at a glance for decision makers who don't have time to look at all of these comments, but also enable more detailed analysis at the comment level if they need to. And then there is this project called Community Bots, which is a new project from my PhD student, Masroor, and my postdoc, Joe, where we used AI, or artificial intelligence, to build a multi-agent chatbot platform. So usually you've seen there are a lot of chatbot platforms, but here our theory was, if we mimic how a human talks with a group of experts, rather than one single person, we can increase the depth and richness of data when we need to elicit data on timely matter of civic. In this case, we were working with the residents of Amherst on the impact of COVID-19 on several aspects and dimensions of their lives. And we ran an extensive study comparing our multi-agent or multi-chatbot platform with a single chatbot platform, which showed that Community Bots participants were significantly more engaged and provided more specific, clear, and expansive responses. To wrap up these prior work in civic, I want to talk about this theoretical work, because this framework took us more than 3 years, maybe 4 years, to think about how to theorize and come up with a framework for other practitioners and technology makers for this space to think about coming up with a structure, to think about opening this civic design process, which is really usually a black box for the public, and enabling them to participate in this democratizing civic participation. So basically, we referred to a lot of work we have done in this area, from Community Click as an example, not that it needs to be, but an example of how we can enrich and make it more inclusive during in-person meetings, to Community Crit, where we can gather public input online and back feed it to something like Community Pulse, where we can better utilize and analyze those data. And then, based on these works and prior work, we came up with guidelines for building effective technology for civics. It's a very interdisciplinary space, of course. It needs social science and political science and a lot of other discipline as well. So building interdisciplinary collaboration and also partnership with city officials, with community members, absolutely important here. Understanding stakeholder needs and constraints. The way we do in a human-centered computing, when we inquire and we do a lot of inquiry with a human, here is more complex because you need to understand the collective needs of the community, really understand them, actively involve them in the process, establishing a trusting relationship to be able to bring them in the space. And then using an agile development method. By that I mean we need to iteratively go through this design, development, and deploy process so we can learn, we can test it, we can refine it, and we can go to the next step, because it's really almost impossible to come up with a solution at the beginning. You have to iteratively test it. And finally, but really important factor is lowering the access. If you want to make it inclusive, you have to lower the access. For domain experts who are experts in their field, but not necessarily with technology and visualization, and also for community members. So now, let's get back to the climate change and rising tide topic. Let's take a look at how Boston coastal areas have been impacted by sea level rise. This map shows by blue highlights the areas that are highly affected, will be affected by sea level rise just near us in Boston area. There are many evidence that suggest and predict that Boston is going to experience a sea level rise. While the numbers are a little bit different from different prediction, what is certain is that we're going to experience that soon. And in response to the sea level rise threat, Boston must rapidly adapt and transform its shoreline to protect those endangered communities and increase equitable resilience. As such, raising awareness and engaging affected communities in planning for adaptation and coming up with strategies is critical. However, the problem is civic engagement, especially with climate change, and especially with those underserved communities, is low. In 2020, my PhD students and I teamed up with Carolina Argon, who's an artist at UMass Amherst, passionate about making art installation to show the impact of climate change. And in this work, we combined art in installation and technology. And by technology, I mean we ran an online survey to ask Boston residents their feelings towards sea level rise happening in their neighborhood. And then we created this art installation based on the data that we gathered. Basically visualize, these are all data points that we gathered. We visualize it, which we call it physicalization, because we materialize those visualizations. And we created this art installation called Rising Emotions, which depicts East Boston communities' feeling about sea level rise. So I want to ask them, I brought these cards for you, postcards that shows the sea level rise. Come by, grab one after one if you want. We surveyed the community on their emotions, and here are the responses we received from 165 participants from East Boston, and we asked for 4 main emotions, which is color-coded in our art installation, such as concern, optimistic, sad, angry, and others were depicted in green. And then the community members help us to inscribe those comments by hand on those ribbons. So you might notice those comments. And then, with the help of community members, our team installed the art installation in front of the East Boston Library, which is a visible space, but it's also a gathering place for community in East Boston. What we learned during the process, working with the community and high school students, was for many teenagers and high school students in the community, rising emotions was their first exposure to climate change and its imminent threat, highlighting the importance of increasing public engagement with climate change in those communities. We had an opening exhibition in December 2020. In the opening reception, we invited scientists from UMass Boston to give a talk. We had people from city and officials who came and gave a talk, and we had more than 30 community members. And East Boston Library staff told us that the exhibition was like really engaging people. People engaged with it and visited after the reception as well. And you see the children that visited this exhibition also enjoyed playing around. However, the playful nature also highlighted a contrast to the grim reality of the projected flood level by 2070 is going to basically cover 3.7 feet. So overall, this process proved, this art installation proved to be successful and impactful in increasing engagement and awareness around climate change, and made me inspired to work with this community especially, and work with other technology that we can make it to a more long-lasting effect, because we had to close the exhibition due to harsh winter weather after 2 weeks. Then, in a recent paper, my postdoc and collaborators at Cornell deployed and evaluated a first of its kind communal extended reality bus tour that depicts the possible impacts of flooding and climate change. What we did in this work, we had a focus group, which is interview with the community we invited at the beginning to talk about climate change. And then we took them to this bus ride together as a community. And there they were wearing this virtual reality head-mounted display to see the impact of neighborhood in their neighborhood. And sometimes we had to stop. They could just get off the bus and see some of the impact in real time, in real place. And finally, we had a focus group afterwards. And one thing that we observed, there were a lot of feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. And some people were like, we're doomed, we need to just move out and sell our house. But this community being together in this bus ride and this togetherness of the experience also brought a lot of creative ideas for a resiliency plan. So after this work, we drafted a resiliency plan for Roosevelt Island, which shows the impact of virtual reality and showing visualization of climate change in a geolocated situation as a powerful tool to bring the message home and help people to experience, understand, and also come up with action plans. So learning from all of that, in Rising Tides, which is my Radcliffe project, based on all of these prior work that suggests augmented reality can be a powerful tool to broaden participation in climate change, I propose to integrate augmented reality with situated visualization, which, as we just talked about, situated visualization brings visualization in situ. So in the place, therefore, connect people and spaces. And augmented reality, of course, can enable people to see the unseen and the climate change effect in the future. And then I said that combining with AR, situated visualization can translate those linear timelines and present predicted future information. My idea was like, even going beyond that and not leaving people with those negative and helpless emotion afterwards, connecting them together as a community to be able to share their comments and ideas and get insight from experts as well. And for case study, I suggested East Boston because of proximity, because it's also an underserved community we work with, and to start with a small test case. Here is the mock-up idea that I came up, and to lowering the access. So instead of wearing those head-mounted or glasses or anything, we can make it much more, I don't have my phone with me, but you can basically have your phone and walk around the neighborhood and right away, in a very intuitive visualization, see that sea level rise. You can interact with the visualization to see how it changes over time. And then here's the idea of, as people are walking through, they can add their comments with different emotions, with questions, and so on, and they can interact with each other comments and build community around that, basically. And this is my fantastic team, Zhu Tian Chen, who's currently a postdoc at Harvard, but is moving to University of Minnesota as a faculty very soon, and also my fantastic Radcliffe Research Fellow, Mahyar Rahman. So far, we have built this website as an entry point, explaining the overall idea of the project, and overview, also showing some of the worldwide flooding effects. And our idea is to add a QR code or link of our application here. So far, for consideration for technology development, as I said, lowering barrier is the key. So if you want to buy a house, real estate agents usually say, location, 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 right? In this area, I would say lowering barriers, lowering barriers, lowering barriers even more. And it's not only to access the technology, but also to understand the material, the content that it's there, to interact with it, sort of interactive technology you make, which subsequently lowers the barrier to public engagement. And therefore, we decided to move from the mobile application that I proposed at the beginning and make it to an AR, to a web-based AR, which is much easier for people. They don't need to download another mobile application, which made it harder for us to build a tool and more challenging, but it could be more impactful. We're also thinking about translating to Spanish for those people who are Spanish-speaking, and then providing a lot of postcards just like this, putting it at libraries and where people can get access to the internet. Here I do have this short video of how it works, early version. I hope that you can see the layer. It's very translucent, but basically that layer is supposed to show it's the beginning, and then we need to add the visualization and commenting option there as well. Well, we also have been working on building partnership and collaboration. We successfully built partnership with Boston Library. They're very enthusiastic to work with us. We've been trying to get in touch with museums and schools because we think that's very important to make connections, as well as we need to build connection with city officials and authorities to make it really happen and come up with action plans, and also climate and social scientists. In terms of outreach, we're thinking about theories for wide-scale and inclusive engagement, which is, first, we need to also involve both community and decision makers for making any action, but also reaching to a representative cross-section of the community and providing social interaction and community interactions. So I just wanted to acknowledge a lot of projects that I presented today were collaborative effort, and acknowledge my collaborators and fantastic students at UMass and beyond. To close, I want to say that my mission is to build innovative and low-barrier technology that enables people to not only understand the effect of climate change, but also mobilize them to come up with actions. I also want to expand beyond Boston. Boston was just a case study that I proposed, but in reality, if you look at how the US has been, or is gonna be, especially in 2100, affected by sea level rise, it will basically displace millions in the US by 2100 if we go with the speed and if we don't do anything. And same thing is happening globally. You can see at this NASA study predicting the sea level rise around the globe. And therefore, my vision is expanding beyond a web-based platform. My vision is to make it an education tool that can be used at school, in museums, even planetariums, to educate and bring community about the effect of climate change. And this is a big mission and vision, and for that, I need collaboration. So I invite you to collaborate with us to make that vision happen. Thank you so much for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Narges. That was a phenomenal talk. I encourage for folks who are in the audience to use the QR codes to submit questions. If you're online, you can also submit questions. So we've got a lot, great ones coming in. And so to start, one theme that has come up a bit in the questions related to climate change that you actually talked a little bit about in terms of some of the data that you're collecting and these feelings and emotions of responses to climate change. And so, given the kind of potential emotional impact of visualizing climate change, consequences on a local scale, I was hoping you could talk a bit about, how you intend to ensure that platforms and the different tools that you're using not only helps informs, but also engages and does so in a way that's constructive and empowering.
That's a fantastic question. Definitely needs more working through, after we build the platform and that commenting option. But as of now, our thinking is that to enable people to not only bring their emotions, but also their questions, to also get access to climate scientists and have some experts and some resources for people to also think about, there is also hope, and there are some, tools and ways to think, to bring people together in terms of building that sense of community by just creating this social impact. We are also thinking about not asking people to just merely use our tool, but gather people in walking tours, where we can guide a group of people in walking tours and have interaction with people to be able to also guide them about how they can better use the tool. But the idea is bringing a lot of different parties to this tool, from resources and answering to their questions and trying to make it to, as we did with the bus tour, to basically translate those negative emotion and sense of hopelessness to creative ideas for climate resiliency actions.
Perfect, thank you. You mentioned the bus tour, right? And I think it's really excellent the way that you talked about how it kind of started as participants wearing these goggles, and then you made a mobile app, and then now you've made a web AR version, right? And really trying to increase the kind of ways of improving access and the different modes of which people can access these tools. And so one of the questions that we had relates to that. So let me just see if I can, where did it go? So one question that we had was related to, estimating the costs of the different kinds of technology that you're using. And they provided the example of the tabletop interactive tool, for example, and whether, these costs or materials would be readily available, if there's ways for outside communities to, have an understanding of how they might be able to use those tools themselves.
That's a great question, actually, and it's been at the front of our thinking the cost in making it available. Interesting to say, those tabletop technology back in 2014 were very expensive and not available, like they were mostly available in research labs. But the one that we used for this work was basically an interactive TV. So we had built those legs for it so we could fold it and we could move it to workshops as we did. We had like 5 workshops to make it more accessible, and the cost was a lot less than those very expensive interactive technologies. But actually moving away from a mobile application to web-based was a comment that one of my brilliant fellows brought, and she was like, as adults, we don't have a space, or we don't trust, a lot of mobile, so we don't want to download another mobile app. And we were thinking about, hey, we can make it more accessible if it's a web-based. And when it's a web-based, the cost is like really, in many surveys that we have done with underserved community, for example, when we work with the Chicano community in San Diego, more than 90% of those communities still carry smartphone. And then still, for the ones that don't have it, there are public libraries, there are access to basically internet. And if you disseminate the work in an inclusive way, we even went to farmers markets, we gave people postcards, or if you disseminate it in an inclusive way, you can broaden this participation of many people. But basically what they need is only using their smartphone, no head-mounted reality headset, nothing. So it makes it really more and more accessible.
That's perfect. That's great. That came up with one of the other questions, right, was that most university or most communities don't have the kind of resources that exist in a university research lab. So having those alternative means for communities is fantastic. And I'm assuming the clickers are cheaper than the tabletops, for example, right, if
Absolutely.
Town wanted to incorporate that. So there's another question that we had come in early, and it relates to the methods and the different tools that you're using and thinking about application. So this person asks, to what extent are your methods applicable to other institutional practices and spaces such as law or courtrooms? And is this something that you've perhaps given thought to of other ways of bringing in community input in a real-time sense?
Absolutely, that's a fantastic question. I recently presented a follow-up paper after Community Click, where we came up with a virtual version of it, so people don't, because everything was shifted or still is a hybrid mode, thinking about online meetings in corporate, in research, thinking about hybrid events like hybrid conferences, how to bring more expressivity, how to make it more interactive, how to make it more inclusive. And we had an online version of it, very much accessible, just one link, send it to Zoom. People not only could say, I agree or I disagree with whatever you're talking about, Narges, right now, they could also add their comments and then basically bringing even more opportunities. So I can imagine that those really low barrier technology can be used outside public engagement, town halls, and in law and courtrooms, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. Yeah, give some ideas to our fellow lawyers in the room. So circling back to something that you mentioned in kind of the beginning frame when you're talking about wicked problems, which I think is also really commonly used in climate change research and science. And you talked about the importance of public engagement in addressing and trying to solve these problems. So we have one question from someone asking if you could describe a case where this approach worked. So maybe even thinking back to the examples you provided, if you were able to follow up with the meeting about the parking spots, for example, yes. Right? And kind of whether the feedback that was collected was incorporated and in what ways?
That's a very important question, and also it's a very, very political one. Because as researchers, we have spent a lot of time just building that trusting relationship with community, going out there, connecting with participants, community, partnering with city. it has been taken a huge amount of time. And then not only designing the technology that works and functions well at a scale that we can deploy, which takes more time than just a research tool, but also making sure that this is based on the needs of communities. So we usually run need finding studies to understand if you're showing 5 feedback, what those 5 feedback, for example, should be for iClickers. Or if we're building visual analytic tools for analyzing comments, what reaction they want to see, and so on. And then when it comes to deployment, we have deployed it also, which is another time-consuming stage. But when it comes to actually work, if actually work they mean like implemented in cities and laws, it's a wicked problem, because you also need to make sure that you have buy-in from those officials. They're confident and ready enough, and they're willing to spend that extra effort for analyzing all of these, incorporating them. I would say one success story, though, is Community Click. When we built the virtual version, the town of Amherst adopted the virtual version, although I should also mention that we spent 6 months extra after Community Click was done, working with the town manager, the communication manager of town of Amherst, to know exactly how they want us to modify the virtual version for them. But they adopted it. They felt at ease like using it, and it's been used in more than 10 public meetings, which is happening online nowadays still. So that's one success story, but came with maybe three years of work.
Yeah, and I appreciate your response, right, of how political these decisions are, right? Because the mayor could change, and then new priorities come in, or I know even in some of my work, right, there's been efforts to gather community input, but then that all hinged on a federal grant that didn't come in, right? So I think oftentimes in planning and these spaces, it can be really, really difficult. I'm curious if there's been, or kind of, if there were any observations that you made in terms of when there was perhaps disagreement among people that were participating as part of this, and how that disagreement got folded into the process.
Well, interesting. We didn't see much of course, there are disagreements if you drill down further. But one interesting observation that one of the civic leaders that use our Community Pulse tool to analyze the feedback coming from basically real community input from San Diego, how to redesign the downtown of San Diego. He was drilling down with our tool, and he was like, you have anonymous user called user 44, which a lot of angry comments on roundabout proposal comes from the same person. So basically showing that one person is rallying and bringing a lot of comments, which happens in this very conflicting space. But then that's why I said Community Pulse was able to even detect some of those anomalies and enable people to have a more filtered way of thinking about where the comments are coming from. But I would say that a lot of my work has been, and a lot of people who've been working in public engagement have been still on increasing public engagement, enhancing it, deepening it. Our work went a little bit beyond by thinking about analyzing, but when it comes to decision-making and final outcomes and conflict resolution, that's a whole another very complex area that needs a lot more research.
Fantastic. You are not wrong on that. Excellent. Well, in light of time, I'll just ask one of the final questions, which is, for folks watching or in the room who want to implement these tools or become a potential partner, how can they best connect with you or your colleagues?
The best way is just to reach out by my email, either Radcliffe or UMass email, and I would love to hear from you. I would love to build collaboration. Our lab is very, very collaborative, and especially bring those valuable interdisciplinary perspective to our work.
Excellent. Okay. Well, you all heard it. Send her an email. So I just want to thank you so much, Narges, for your presentation and the excellent questions. I'm sorry we could not get to everyone's questions, but please, she's invited you all to email her. And thank you as the audience for your excellent questions as well. So I hope that you all will be able to join us for the Radcliffe virtual programs that will resume in the new year. And you can find out more about our future programs or watch videos of this presentation as well as past recordings on the YouTube channel for Radcliffe as well at radcliffe.harvard.edu. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you so much, Narges.